problem that I'm having there. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I think it has to do. I'm almost. Actually, I'm sure that it has to do with the threads, but I don't know exactly what it is the problem with the threads. I'm guessing now that it is because of a deadlock or something related to this, because it seems to be stopping when it tries to join the threads. I think it has to do with the way that I'm calling scan there and the way that the threads are set up on the editor file system. So like one of the problems was the loop that it wasn't running, and I figured out this with the debugger, or it was running, it wasn't stopping because the scanning was never false. So this is the class that I have that I'm translating the editor file system that I have. So translated to this class here, and I just made small changes. But basically here on the node exit notification of the class, they have this is the loop that I changed. So they didn't have this wait and timeout. They only had the scanning. So while scanning, the delay the OS. And I was asking ChatGPT there about it, and I think that this is just for CPU usage, and the check is to make sure that the thread is finished scanning before it joins. Because there could be a situation where the thread has more things to do after the scan or something like that. So that's the reason why they're putting two checks here. But the problem with this is that, and also I asked ChatGPT that, and ChatGPT agrees that it's very hard to, like, when doing things this way, it becomes very hard to know or to prevent bugs from being implemented, because it's very hard to keep track of the scanning variable. So this is the issue here. Yeah, it has to do with the scanning variable, which is set to true after you call the scan, I think, function. So the thing that I don't know is why this is happening, because I didn't do too many things differently. And it started happening once I tried to implement the signal that changes the root directory of the class. So obviously because of this, I assume that it has something to do with the way that I'm updating the thing there. But I think that, so the first thing that I'm probably gonna try is change the directory on the file dialog, because I'm switching from a path I think that was previously a RAS path to documents. The first time that this happens was on this situation, and then I deleted the cache to fix the button there, and I also had to change I created another variable to display the file, the tree and the split box, which are the elements that show the files based on a condition, which is obviously going to be based on whether or not you had a configuration. Because when you don't have a configuration, I want you to display a button. Maybe later I'll put more stuff instead of a button, but I think the button is fine. It's just a open folder button. And then if you have a configuration, if you have a directory that you previously opened, then it's just going to start with that directory. So it has something to do with the way that these updates are being made. And I think that it's probably related to the dear access folder or class as well. But I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna wait to see if streaming here. Then I'm gonna. I think the first thing that I was thinking about implementing is to change the BM file dialog, which is the other class that I created. Just similar to the file. It's basically the same thing as the file dialog, but I changed the access, and I just remembered this now. So I'm gonna try this now, I think. I'm gonna see if it stopped the previous time on Godot. Yeah, it's still running. So when this is happening, even after you close the debugger, the process of Godot is still running. So assume that is something to do with the threads that is deadlocking, and then because that doesn't close the application. So Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the function that I'm putting there as a callback. So on the signal, there is selected, which comes from the BM file dialog, which is just a file dialog with the constructor changed, which is what I'm going to see now. It's going to call that function, and that function is going to create a button that is going to display there in the beginning, and it's going to hide the split box and the tree so that only the button shows. And this class works based on a variable that is from the dir access. So I think this one is the one that I changed, and this one is the one that determines the functionality of this class. And this is the class that is going to be responsible for creating the file dialog. After you click the button, it's just going to emit the signal. Then based on the signal, it's going to call the function for the file dialog to open. So I did this on the other classes as well, that I changed the way that this works. I think it's create for path or something. Yeah, create for path. The other thing that I probably gonna do as well is to, because I was getting a leak of objects when I was trying to incorporate on the scene, and it was coming both from the icon sidebar, which I also changed. So the way that I was doing on the icon sidebar before is I was removing the direct childs, and I was adding a new node every time you clicked a button. So, and I was also making based on the, actually I'm still, that part I didn't change, but I was thinking about changing because it's just a lot easier to change. But the way that it is right now, I'm using class DB to select the class based on the name of the icon and the name of the icon that I save, name of the icon file, the SVG file that I save on a specific folder. And then based on that name, it's going to create a class of that type, and it's going to add that to the target node. That is the node that's supposed to change every time you click the icon. So I was removing the class and then adding again, but I decided that it's much better to just hide and show instead, which is hide and show their functions from the canvas item class. That, as far as I understand, they just like the name says, they just hide the element from the visualization. And the thing that I wasn't sure is whether or not the hiding of the element changes the structure. And apparently it doesn't. Like it's just as if the item wasn't there, the node that you are rendering. And I think that's how the tab container works. So the reason why I didn't do like that in the beginning is because I thought that would change the structure if I hide, because you wouldn't display, but it would have the same container structure that the class had. But it seems that it's working now, so I'm probably just gonna leave it like that, because I also think it's better, because then you don't have to run the constructor and destructor every time. So yeah. So initially I think that there was one of the problems that was related to this because of the classes. So when the constructor runs, because one of the classes was not a part of the scene, it didn't automatically delete or free the memory for the class. And then I thought about changing this stuff here, and then I realized later that they're also deleting this on the exit, node exit. But I think it's better to put on both, because I think there are some situations where it's not guaranteed for the node notification exit to run. And I think that's exactly why I was getting the problem before, where I was giving a memory leak even though it has on the notification exit to delete. Because I think it was deleting the class before it ran this stuff for whatever reason. And then it wasn't deleting these nodes here that are not part of the tree structure. Oh, this is a problem actually, because so this is gonna be hard to figure out. Because this works with the path. It has to be an initial path that you put this. The thing is, it's probably not related to this, the problem. There is a chance that it is, but I think it's unlikely. The problem is that I don't have a very good understanding of how the functions are gonna work for their access, how they're gonna be related to the threads. Because on the other ones, I'm using create for path, so I think it doesn't matter that much because in my mind, what's gonna happen is that this class is gonna open the file dialog from the path that I put there in the beginning, which is gonna be an access file system path. And because obviously that makes a lot more sense because the purpose is for you to be able to access any folder or any path on the operational system. So, yeah, and it doesn't make sense for allowing the RAS or user path. And then after you select the folder, what's going to happen is that this class is going to emit a signal and it's going to send the path with the signal. And then on the other the callback function that you have from this, you're going to receive the path, and then I'm updating the state of the file system doc with that path. So I think it doesn't matter that much. It might matter. The thing I'm not really sure is about the transition, but it's probably something else. What makes this problem annoying is that's very hard to figure out because it just stops, and it depends on the threads. So it's hard to figure out the state of each thread and what it's supposed to do. And also, like, it's hard to keep track, which is what I keep coming back to in my mind, which I felt in the beginning that it feels kind of weird the way that the thing is designed there, but it might just be because of the nature of using multiple threads. But it gets kind of confusing because there's two different threads. One that is gonna run after every time you want to scan a new directory, and there's the other thread that they use to scan changes on the directory. And I'm sure they have an explanation for this, but I'm not I don't understand very well why wouldn't they use the same thread for both situations. I think it does make sense for using the thread because it's something that is going to happen very often, and you want to free up like the other threads to process stuff that is probably not going to be related to this. So it doesn't make sense to use threads, but then why use different threads for scanning changes and I think it has to do. This is kind of the part that I think it doesn't, like, it's not that it doesn't make sense, it's that it's just confusing. So, but I'm not really sure what way I can do it to simplify this, because like it makes sense in the way that it's designed, because the way that it works is that every time that you scan on the file system, they have a function here which is the rescan, but it's basically just gonna call scan on the file system. Every time that it does that, the file system, when it's finished scanning, is gonna emit a signal, and then after that signal, they have a callback function on the file system doc class that is going to update the state of the front end. So it kind of makes sense because like it synchronizes through the signal, but it's annoying because of the nature of the thread. So like if you're doing multiple things, if you're updating the state of the thing in multiple different places because of whatever reason, like because let's say like you call scan, then one thread is running and starting the scan, but then on some other function like a dialog or something, you also want to update the thing. Like it's gonna either you're not gonna scan because you have to put a check before doing that to prevent two scans at the same time, or so either it's not gonna update properly or it's just gonna give one update and it's gonna skip the other one. So yeah. And this is the function that is running after. So this is the dialog. The mode is gonna determine whether or not you're gonna select a folder or a file. And then here I'm getting this path from the OS, which is just the system documents. The OS abstract base class, and then each operating system is gonna inherit from OS, and it's gonna implement specific functions for the APIs of the operating systems. And for each one, they're going to be able to get the documents path. So the way that I'm doing right now is going to open on the documents of the user. And then after you select, the folder is going to emit this dir selected, and I'm receiving the path here. Then I update the path on the file system. Then I update the current path of this class here. So the current path, I think, is the variable that determines what path is selected right now on the file system. And here's the part that I'm talking about. So this is one of the things that I did that because I wasn't sure if this was a problem, but it didn't fix, which is to check to see if the file system is scanning, and if it is not scanning, then you scan. And so the way that I'm thinking about it, you select the file, and you update the paths, then you scan the file system again, because the scanning is the thing that is going to create the... And this is the part that is kind of annoying, that I'm not really sure what is happening. I think it has to be something to do with this, because I think what might be happening is that for whatever reason, when the thread starts, the problem is that it doesn't make sense for the other thread to keep going because they are the flags there. But maybe like it's starting two threads that are the same. So there's both this thread here, which comes from the normal scan, and then there's another thread that they use, which I think is thread sources for the scan changes. So I think whenever you have a situation where you call scan 2 times in a row, and for whatever reason the flags here don't prevent the function from running, it's gonna set two threads of the same type twice in a row, and then for this reason it stops one of the threads from deadlocks one of the threads. But I'm not really sure if that makes sense or not. It can't be the process because the while loop there inside of the process is, oh no, maybe, yeah, maybe it could be the process actually, because the while loop is on the exit. So on C++, in order to make the node call the process function, you have to call the set process here and pass through. And I think that they are doing this to prevent the thing. Like this is another thing that I mean that it's kind of weird. It feels like there's a lot of opportunity to make mistakes, I think. Like the more complex things become, the harder it gets to figure out what is, if you get a bug, what is the problem. So for that reason, I think that there must be a way to simplify this, but I'm not really sure how. So I have to think about it this. But I think that the way that the reason why they use this here and they sets, I think they're gonna set true false on the actual process, is because it's working like a flag, so like a semaphore on Vulkan. It's the same idea, I think, that they are implementing. So yeah. So once like you call the scan, it's gonna trigger that thing. It's gonna start the thread, which is gonna have the callback function. Just gonna call scan file system, which is gonna create a new file system dir class, which is the root of the folder. Then it's gonna scan the directory of the path that you updated, that you passed there to scan file system, which I'm using current root dir. On their class, they always use the same root. So yeah, but on my situation, I'm using current root dir directory. I think that it has something to do with this as well. Like when you change the initial path for whatever reason, it breaks. But then that class is gonna recursively traverse the directory and is gonna create a new file system directory class for each folder, and it's gonna keep the state on a linked list, I think, and then after it creates everything and updates the state of the new file system dir class, is going to run the process, and it's going to reheat this condition here, because this scanning is set to true on the beginning of the callback function that triggers the thread. And also it sets the process there to true. So it's like working as a flag, but it is weird because I guess the explanation might be because you have two different threads here. So maybe there are situations where like you want this flag to prevent the other one from running, but you still want the process to keep running because you might have the other threads. But the other thread is also, there's also a flag, I think, if I remember correctly. Like they use the same flag to stop the other thread from being triggered, but maybe not. Yeah, so they have the same flag here to stop this one from. So this is the thing that I don't understand. So if you already have this flag, why you are using set process equals to true? Doesn't make a lot of sense. And the other thing that I realize now is that the condition here seems to be thread started, and the condition on the other one is also the same, I think. It's on the scan. Thread started. This is also weird. So they are always using thread is started to determine whether or not they are gonna run this function. Or maybe I should look into that class because it might be something that I did. But I think it would make more sense to put the other thread as a flag there. So either, like, I'm not sure which order it would be, but I'm guessing that on the scan changes you should put thread sources is started to prevent. But maybe you want to prevent the thread sources from running. This might be the case actually. So since they have the same flag for both situations, it prevents the scan changes from running after or before the scan happen, which makes sense. But it doesn't prevent multiple scan changes running at the same time. So it might be this. The reason might be. I guess I can try and see if that's gonna work. Yeah, threads is started. Threads is started. So I don't know why they. These flags here is the thing that I don't like that much. Like, it's too many flags, and it seems that there could be a way to. So I have to think about what ways can I simplify this. The reason why it's annoying is because like the flags are like, it's kind of like it would be better to make everything work first to be able to fix this. But then the issue is if you make everything work first, then like you might not want to fix because once you move on to other stuff that might be more important. So I'm not really sure because the problem with changing this now is that it might just make the problem worse that I have there. But it just seems that there's too many flags here. I think the first thing that I'm gonna try is just put the thread sources is started. Oh, they put here, and maybe that's why it doesn't need to put there. Yeah, I think that's the reason why. So it makes sense. So like you want to prevent the thread sources from running before they scan happen. So that's why they have the condition here, but they don't have on the other one because the other way around is not supposed to happen, I think. Because like if you can't scan the changes if the thread is not started. Oh, maybe actually you can. Hmm. So it might be. So I think it might be the other way around. So I have to check for thread sources. Yeah, here's the same check. I think I'm gonna put. Try to put this condition here to see if it solves anything. I'm gonna go over with the debugger. I have to. I think I'm gonna probably spend some time trying to clarify exactly what is the purpose of each flag there. Just see if I can eliminate. Also have to think about whether or not it makes sense to do it in another way. Maybe the signals does make sense because it's the easiest way, I think. And like, because otherwise there is no way to connect the two different classes. So I think the signal makes sense. So like, ideally, what you want is after each time that there's an update on the directory, it's gonna force updates on the background, like on the server of the thing, which is the file system. Then after it updates the state on the backend, then it sends a signal to the front end, which would be the tree class that is on the file system doc. And then that signal is gonna update the state of the front end to reflect whatever happened on the scan. I think it makes sense to make that with the signals. But maybe, so maybe it is possible to simplify the flags though. To and maybe it does make sense to have the because the reason for this should one of them is to prevent the scan changes from running before or whenever it's the normal scan is running, and the other one is to prevent true scanning changes from running. So after the first one, it's just gonna set a flag and it's gonna stop. Only when it's done here, it's not false. So I guess one of the questions is what is the difference between as scanf as changes and scan new system directory. I think that the difference is the actions. Yeah, so it is different. Because this one is gonna loop over the classes that already has, the other one creates a class. So it is definitely different. This is interesting as well. Each files here. I think that this is probably not the issue because otherwise you wouldn't be stuck on the loop here. So the fact that it's stuck on the loop means that it's gonna run the class. It has to be something. The only thing that makes sense to me is that that the threads triggers and starts executing whatever the process is, whatever the thread's gonna do. Then you close the application, and then the application process starts running, and then it deletes everything, and it gets to the point where it has to clean up everything or wait for the threads. But then this one is stuck somewhere else. So the main thread does everything, and the other one that is started before. So let's say it closes when like the other thread is running. So I guess one of the questions would be if true. The problem is that I can't put the breakpoint there on the thread cycle because it's just going to stop the application from running. So the question is whether or not how can I check to see? So scanning is false. Scanning is true when it hits this because I'm getting the warning there. So I should put the scanning changes here, just check to see if both. So I know for sure that the threads, the first thread is running, which is this thread, but I'm not really sure about the other one. So I'm gonna put another message there to see. I think it's scanning changes. I just realized that I changed the wrong class there as well. I put this on the editor file system. It's supposed to. So it's probably running. It's supposed to set the scanning to false after it runs the scan.u directory. Maybe this could be a problem as well. Maybe it's better to put only on the process. I wonder if they have there as well. So this could be one of the reasons why they are using the set process false as well. Because when the scanning is false, it's gonna be true there. So it means it's gonna run that thing. That's kind of weird. So if scanning is true, it's not gonna run the other function. Then it doesn't run this one. When the scanning is false, it runs this. But if it's gonna run this one when the scanning is false, then what happens on the scanfs, scan changes? This is gonna be false as well, so it's not gonna run. So it's not gonna stop this one from running. Yeah, but when the scan is false, it's supposed to do that because it's gonna be finished with the scan. How would this be possible? If there is all these flags here, it doesn't matter how many times I call scan, in which order I call, you should never make the thread stop. So one possible, this is one of the reasons why I'm thinking that it might be something to do with the access or something like that. It might be something to do with directory access or something like this. Because one potential thing that could be happening is that because it's the documents path for whatever reason it doesn't scan. But I think that's unlikely because I already had situations where I opened the documents. The other thing that I was thinking about is that it can be something to do with the configurations, the settings, exactly because of this, where when I didn't have, when I didn't change the state of when I didn't change the root, it was working before to display the documents folder. So that should be something to do. It has to be something to do with the threads and something to do with changing the root directory. So when changing the root directory and running the other function there, rescanning with the new root directory, it seems that it's messing up. It seems that changing the root directory is messing up the threads. The question is why. So one thing that I can test is open the. Oh, the other thing that is kind of weird is that it's not scanning anymore. It just displays the root. So I'm gonna do that again. I'm going to remove the cache there and then run. Select the documents, and it's just gonna show the root. It doesn't show the other. So it means that there's something going on. So I'm gonna put the breakpoint on the scan directory because I think it's something to do with the access on the scan directory probably. So here it seems that it's not showing the other one, so it means that only the scan thread is active when this is happening. Hmm. So I'm gonna put a breakpoint on the scan new directory, and I'm going to erase the cache, then open the thing with the to see what is going on. So build again. So I'm pretty sure that it's gonna open the button based on the way that I was testing before. Because when it doesn't have a configuration, it's gonna open the button to open the folder for the first time. So I want to see what happens. I want to step into this function here. The problem is that once I step into the scan, it doesn't go directly here. But hopefully with the breakpoint, it's gonna stop. I'll be right back. So now it's showing this linked instance here, which is the file system directory, which is from this class here. So I'm pretty sure that what this means is that it's not running. So it's running the destructor of the class before it runs the notification exits. Maybe, but I think I already tried to do this. I already put this on the destructor, the same stuff that I have on the. So the same stuff that they have here. The thing is, I didn't put the loop, I think. But I was putting this wait to finish on the destructor as well, and it wasn't solving. But the question would be, in which situation is gonna run the destructor? So I guess I can put a breakpoint there as well. Just like the file system class is a child of the file system doc, but the file system directory is not a child of the file system. And I think it's better that way because the problem is if I make the file system directory a child, I think I'll have to remove each time that the scanning directory updates, because each time that the scanning directory updates, it creates a new class for file system. So it makes more sense to make them separate. And I think that's how they designed the class to be. And that's the reason why they are deleting here. But so I think that the difference is that because they on their implementation it is a singleton. So it means that it is always guaranteed to run the exit, I think. But I'm not really sure if I should do this because I'm already putting the wait to finish here. I'm not putting the loop, but it should stop here. I still have to spend more time as well to really understand why, because it doesn't seem correct to me to have to do this. Like, why would you loop on the scan and wait to finish? But I think it's just because I don't understand very well the wait to finish implementation. In my mind, the way that it works is that the thread is just gonna, like the name says, is gonna wait for. I'm not really sure if it waits for. I think it waits for the other threads. It's basically gonna call join on the source. So it's like a synchronizing mechanism for the threads. So in which situation it would be? Which situation would make sense to wait for the scan before calling wait to finish? That is the question. It's calling just calling join. I think it's probably not related to this as well. What's also interesting is why there's a leak here. Like, because it's not necessarily, maybe it's a situation where, no, but it should delete everything if it runs this, I think. So it means that it's not running. I forgot that I should put on the other one. So I have to test both this schedule there. And I'm gonna put on the destructor. And I'm going to, I think I already have on the notification process. I also already have one here. So I'm usually debugging the game, but I'm gonna run this one first because I'm curious to see if it's gonna run this thing here, which I assume it probably doesn't, but it might be another reason why it's not deleting the new file system directory. I think what is happening is that I don't remember actually if I'm deleting on the file system doc because I did put there, but then I commented out after because the file system is already part of the. Yeah, I'm not deleting, but it's already part of the. I'm adding as a child, so it's gonna delete automatically at some point. But I think what's happening is that when it deletes the file system, it doesn't run the exit tree, so it deletes before. But I'm not really sure if this, like, I think it's unlikely that this is the problem that I have there with the threads. Also, it is running the destructor here, but it didn't run the notification. Hmm. But I think when you, because this is slightly different as well, than running the game, because I'm doing like a hack there to call my function, so it's kind of different. Interesting. So this is the reason why it's not showing the message there. So I guess every time that it doesn't show the other message is because it's something breaking. It's trying to unreference something. The problem is that I don't have access to what it is that is trying to do this. So I guess if I remove the thread there, I'm gonna. It's probably related to the destructor, I think. So I think it's because it runs the destructor multiple times, and then the thread finishes. I'm not really sure. It's because it's still running the process. It looks like it stopped now. I'm gonna try again. What? Because there is no process open there. That's very weird. Maybe it's the ID or a different name for the process. See if I can run. It looks like it is opening directly on the executable, but for whatever reason, it seems that it might be something to do with the IntelliSense on the ID. Oh no, I found here. Oh, but this is the one that I just opened, I think. It's not responding. Yeah, it's the one that I just opened. I'm gonna try to close again and see what happens. Oh, there was one running here. I don't know. I think. Not pretty sure. It's saying access denied, but there isn't any Godot process here. I'm gonna try to close and open the IDs. Just see if it's gonna work. So I guess it was something to do with the ID. Just very strange what is happening. I think the two things that are the most likely to do with this is the first one should be the changing root directory, and the other one is save config. Something to do with the configuration. But I think it's probably more likely to be something happening when in relationship to the threads when I change the directory. The thing that is weird is that I'm checking now. If I remember correctly, I'm doing the check on all the threads. All the time that I set that I call scan, I'm checking to see if it's scanning already. So like one thing that could be possible that I just thought is, but it's not gonna happen because of all the other flags I think as well. But maybe it can happen that uh, while one thread is scanning, the other one tries to scan. So like the file system there already exists, and then it creates another one, and then because of the difference in the roots there, it would have a problem like that, or but I think that's kind of unlikely. It should be this. That should be something else. It's also interesting that it's calling this multiple times. So this is one question: is why would this be called multiple times as well? So obviously the only explanation is that there's multiple instances of the class. But how is this possible? So I'm gonna run the game now. Maybe the threads is a singleton. I think it's probably not. But the actual implementation is this one. Whenever you are using threads, it's gonna enable this macro. And then this is gonna be the actual definition of the class. Yeah, it doesn't. It also, I think it wouldn't make sense to be a singleton. So this is I removed also the icon sidebar from the thing just to figure this out, and then because obviously there's more things that can be wrong once I add the icon sidebar as well. So I'm just trying to focus on solving this first, so I can put the icon sidebar again, and then it would change the way that it's shaped here as well. Because I think yeah, but so. And so there's two situations. One is when you set from here, and the other one is when I set from the file there. So this one happens through a signal that is connected outside of the classes, and the other one, the button, obviously is the one that I have there inside of the class that has the callback function, and then it runs this thing here. So it's supposed to update there. So it's not scanning, so it's gonna call this, but this is a problem because it's not gonna show there now. It's just gonna set the callback. So whatever argument you pass, the first argument is gonna be the callback function you want to run on the thread. And then it's not gonna allow me to, but hopefully when I press F5, it's gonna get you the scan.u directory there at some point. And the split box, as far as I understand right now, I commented out a bunch of classes. I was trying to figure out exactly which class is responsible for, or each class or each variable is responsible for showing the actual file system. And I believe it's the split box and the tree. So the split box is the main thing that shows the square where the files are going to be. And the tree class is the thing that shows the actual directories and files. But this is supposed to show the tree. Because now I'm making based on this variable. Should determine whether or not to display. Okay, so now it looks like it is going here. So it does have the correct path there. So maybe, let me check. I should put the breakpoint there now. To see if it's gonna. It probably will. I'm interested on the signal here. Because this signal is supposed to call the callback function on the other one. And this one is also gonna be interesting to stop. I'm just gonna press F5 because it's gonna be take a bunch of time. Yeah, I think this part's like it's not gonna allow me to see anything. That's the problem. The one thing that is interesting is that is not. It wasn't showing the folders before. So since it is working here, it seems to be working. It's probably something to do with the uncollapsed folder variables, I think. But I think it should show anyway the icon there. I'm gonna test. I'm pretty sure if I click on the file, it's just gonna select, so I'm gonna show the children. I'm just gonna skip this. Oh, I'm pretty sure it's gonna work here. So it's gonna get the directories in the files and it's gonna update the file system dir. But this is interesting because it's not going. It seems that it's not going over the process. So maybe this is the issue. Like it's supposed to. So maybe it is running the process is not because of the flags for whatever reason. It is not stopping here. Yeah. So this is true. It's supposed to be false. So probably this is what's happening. So it's running the scan for whatever reason is not setting the, because it seems that it's not gonna stop anywhere else, I think. I should put on the, I think it's scan file system. Should put a breakpoint here. The question is why, like either it's reaching this point or is making scanning goes through somewhere else. So maybe, yeah, but it didn't. So I should put a breakpoint on all the parts because obviously this wasn't happening before. So it makes me think that it's probably because like there can be a situation where once one thread is finishing, the other is starting, and then it sets the scan to true, but the other one is not finished. So like one of them gets stuck there, I think, or maybe two. It's the only explanation that makes sense to me right now. So the only place that is sending to false is here. Let me press 5. So it looks like it is. So there's two weird things. One is this that is not showing the children, which is supposed to show. And the other one is that. So how does it show the children? And the reason why it's not showing the children is because of the event. Since it's not running this, it's not gonna emit the signal, and then because it doesn't emit the signal, it's not gonna update the tree on the front end. So it is getting the states of the file system dir correctly, but it's not updating the front end because it doesn't never triggers the signal. So now the question is, and I'm pretty sure this is gonna be, it's definitely related to the reason why it's not is stalling here and never stopping because the thread got stuck there. So another interesting thing is, I guess like it makes sense. So like one of the threads that is responsible for updating the state there gets stuck, but it doesn't break the application because there's still the main thread running. So the question obviously is how is it possible for the variable should never be set? I think I'm gonna put a, yeah, I'm gonna put a breakpoint on all this scan as well. Yeah, and here I forgot to step into, but on the function there, one of the functions is gonna break here. It's gonna keep waiting forever, I think. It's also interesting. So why does it stop there? Hmm. So the question is like, if it is the same threads in the beginning, the one that it didn't go through the process, then how is it possible that it gets stalled here if this one is supposed to join that threads with the main one? I think it's probably deadlock. Is a deadlock on the first thread. So I'm gonna put a breakpoint on all the places that I'm calling scan on the other one. And I think this makes me think like it's very likely that it's possible to improve the class. I'm just not sure if like one, I'm not really sure how I would go about doing this, and the other one is I'm not really sure if it's worth the time because there's so many other things to focus on. So like after I solve this, I'm not really sure if I'm going to spend a bunch of time. It's just annoying as well because of the flags there. So, but it definitely feels that like this situation should never happen. Like it should be designed in a way that regardless of how many times you call, it never breaks. And if it breaks, it gives you a warning. Like so you can easily tell. I think that's what's if I try to change this, that's what I'm gonna aim to try to do. Because I think it is understandable if you have a situation where like it's not designed for calling scan multiple times, but then like if every time that you have this problem, it becomes very hard to know from where it's coming from. I think that indicates probably that it's possible to change something to make it easier to figure out. So I think all the places that have rescan, I guess I can just put on the rescan here because gonna. This is one place. I think on the beginning there, I was also calling. So another question would be, I should probably delete the configuration, then run again, and then try to set the directory from the root. I'm going to do that. So after these ones I commented on, so I should also probably delete this thing. But this one is the one on the ready. So I'm putting here and both here as well. I think it's just hard to, because like much better than doing this would be to couple the updates of the file system with whenever you have a change, because like the changes are gonna come from outside of the class. They need to happen through a function, so the function is scan, but then gets weird because of the threads. Yeah, so the key of the issue I think is the flags and the nature of the process. So it's the cycle of the class. So this is one of the issues. The other issue I think is on the exit there. But I think probably the reason why they put on the notification exits is because of the thing that sometimes the destructor is going to run multiple times. So there is like a situation because the threads, the destructor can run. Yeah, but then like because the thing is I'm not 100% sure about the crash there that I was getting when putting the because I was waiting for the thread on the destructor. I think the key to this is that it lacks symmetry. That's probably the core thing. And there are some like uncertainties about the mental model that I have about the threads and the life cycle of the classes on Godot, because that's the problem. So like, how does it work when you? So I guess I should probably ask questions to try to clarify this, but it seems that it's gonna be kind of hard to find answers to this. Because this is a form of data erase. So like one trans is gonna delete the memory that the other one is using. So probably mutex. This is another thing that ChatGPT suggested, but it wasn't specifically for this. It was related. It was the same problem, but in a different spots that it was saying. But I think that it might be. Because then I'm gonna have to see the way that it did the class there as well, which is gonna be very annoying. Because in order to, or either that, or can you just use the mutex class in the same way that they use on the safe numeric, I think, or the call data or whatever. Because the way that I'm thinking now is that like the class has to have symmetry on the constructor and destructor to avoid the deletion, like to balance things out on the memory cycle. So that makes more sense. So everything you do in the constructor, if it's not, if it doesn't have side effects, it should be down on the destructor. So like if it is responsibility of the class for the memory on for whatever way you use memory on the constructor on the heap, you should be dealing with that on the destructor because then it balances out. But if you have this situation where you have two different threads, or have threads, then if during the lifetime, if the life cycle of the class as a whole has side effects, and you're using threads, then it might lead to problems because of data races. Because it's kind of obvious because like one thread is gonna go outside of the class and it's gonna run and do its thing, and then the life cycle of the class is gonna be determined by another thread. So when this thread is doing stuff, this one's gonna delete the memory for the thread, and then the other thread is gonna try to access that spot and it's gonna crash. So obviously, in order to prevent that, you should put uh, mutexes. So another question is, would it make sense to initialize the thread on the constructor instead of initializing on the function? And the problem with this is that like I do think it makes sense to initialize based on the function because the purpose of the thread is like a job. So it is the function itself. So it doesn't make sense to initialize on the constructor. But the thing is, like, I was checking there on the destructor as well, so maybe it's something else. The reason why it wasn't deleting properly. It looks like I have all the things here, so I'm gonna delete the cache again. And I'm gonna try to set the root from the other path now. Instead of using the button, I'm just gonna use the file menu there. So I'll be right back. So one thing that I'm gonna try as well is to put some breakpoints on the scan file system after the first scan new directory runs, because that way it's gonna allow me to know if there are two different threads that are gonna run scan. Because I think that's the only thing that makes sense, but it's weird because but I removed the breakpoints on the scan new directory after the first time. So I think the only thing that would make sense is that one thread runs, but then it would set the variable as well. So that's what's weird there. Unless like they are both they both start at the same time. A set process, true. And then it runs scan, so it doesn't count. But it's gonna be false. So the place where he's stalling or stopping is exactly this line here. So I assume that it is this function here. So try should join this thread. Pretty sure this is gonna call the other function from the other class. Sure updates everything. There's two main things that I want to clarify. One is the first problem, which is this like the reason why it's not calling the not closing the application correctly. The other one is what is happening there on the destructor. So why does it crash even when I put the wait to finish thing? Yeah, so is the relationship between class instances and threads? I think it's gonna be hard to because it's gonna be hard to find information based on this because from what I've searched, from the videos that I watched and the articles and other stuff that I read, it like maybe it was talked about it and I just didn't pay attention, but I'm pretty sure that most of the videos are not gonna talk about this. They usually just explain the normal like normal stuff, the beginning, but they don't show like different circumstances and examples because it is like a thing, and this is just the nature of how things work. Because the more nuance it becomes, the harder it becomes to, the harder it gets to like create a video around it. Obviously, because the more complex situation is, the more unique it's gonna be, and it's hard to just build stuff or find these situations just for a video. So usually when you get into this position, the way to do things is just to try to break down into fundamental principles and then just break down the problem and look into each part and then try to figure out and then synthesize later based on the different parts. So if I can't find anything directly related to this, I'm just gonna try to clarify more the fundamentals about the memory, which is stuff that I'm already doing. But I'm doing not in the context of C++ right now, just focusing more on assembly and stuff like that. And computer architecture. So, but eventually I'm probably gonna do this anyway. Which is, I think, like all these questions are gonna be more trying to clarify the relationship between the memory management on C++ and threads. The connection between them, like beyond the concepts, the simple concepts, like on the runtime of programs, what's happening when you have multiple different threads, and like, because it gets very complex with cache coherence and memory mapping and like other stuff like this, and also kernel privileges and the relationship between the OS and the programming language. And I think like this thing about like understanding the life cycle of the class and how it's gonna manage memory in different contexts and what is happening as the other threads are executing. So like a class that has threads or create threads, how are the threads, because the threads are going to be member variables as well. And that's the thing that is weird. And this goes back to, like, in order to fully understand, I think, it goes back to computer architecture because it's going to be dependent on the computer architecture, the way that the CPU is going to handle the interruptions, the exceptions, and how it's going to have the life cycle of the instructions. Things fetch, decodes, executes, then memory, the cycle on von Neumann architecture. And then you have flag variables on the computer architecture that are gonna allow you to determine when an interruption happen or when an exception happen. Exception comes from the program, so when something went wrong on the execution of the program, it sets a flag on the data pipeline, and then based on that flag, is gonna have sequences of instructions, which is just a finite state machine that is gonna deal with the exception, and the interrupt is basically the same thing, but it comes from the outside. So if there was a keyboard or an event or something that happened on other parts of the hardware, it's going to trigger the flag, which is going to interact with the data path. Then based on that, it's going to stop the execution at that point. Then it's going to put the instructions on a buffer, I think, or on the stack. But this concept of the stack is kind of tricky as well to understand because obviously you have the stack of the program, but it seems like based on the videos I've seen, that's because it wouldn't make sense to put the instructions on the same stack that is executing at the moment, because the instructions would already be on the stack. So I think what happens is that they are taken away from the current stack, and they use a buffer to snapshot the state of the execution of the program to put that on another stack, and then that stack is going to be the one that is used to retrieve later after the interrupt and continue the execution of the program. And it becomes even more complicated and confusing because of the out of order and in order differences and the scalar and superscalar differences in architecture. So it's basically trying to maximize the amount of instructions you have per clock cycle and how fast or how efficient you are on predicting the future instructions. Because it's basically branch prediction, and there's other memory predictions as well, and then cache locality and stuff like that. I think this is the reason why it's very hard to, because it's not that it is inherently hard to understand threads, it's just that there's a lot of black boxes because of all these layers of abstractions you have to cover, and like a lot of them is just like you can't really know for sure what is happening. So so this is the function that runs after the events emitted there on the other class. I'm just gonna press F5. So yeah, this is the problem. Is gonna this is supposed to work like this. So because it's exactly the same way that they do on the editor. On the editor node, I think they have this event here. So every time you focus the application, it's gonna run the scan just to update with the current state of the directory. Because there could be changes made to the directory from outside of the application, so it wants to synchronize. It's gonna set blah blah blah. Such files later. It meets. So I'm gonna remove from here. Yeah. So I have to remove, and then after I select, I put again. So I'm gonna open from this one now. I think. I'm trying to think about, because obviously the fundamentals are more important than the specific situation. So the problem, because I want to improve my mental model of how these things work. So like next time when I'm faced with the same problem, I'm able to solve faster. So like I do think, so I have a very high confidence when it comes to this, that there is likely that there's something fundamentally that could be improved there. I'm not 100% sure, because it is working and it works for the purpose that they created there. But just it seems, just based on the amount of flags that they have there and the structure of the process, it seems that there is something that can be improved, but I'm not quite sure what it is. And I'm trying to clarify on my mind the fundamentals of why that might be the case or may not be the case, because obviously I could be wrong. So I want to clarify. I want to spend time clarifying this so I can break down into fundamental principles, so I can research and then clarify. So the question obviously is always going to be, how do you bring light to the black boxes? So I think that the main thing that is, I'm going to think about fundamental principles here. The question is, what is worth more to spend time trying to clarify now? I think obviously one of the things is going to be the life cycle of Godot classes. The thing is, the problem is I have to like bring this to C++ fundamental principles, because it's gonna be easier to search based on C++. Because if I search for the Godot stuff, I'm not gonna be able to find too specific to Godot. So this is the challenge, is because it's very unique when it comes to like this notification thing is a thing that Godot has. And I'm sure there is a similar pattern, probably fundamental, that like is gonna work in the same way. It's just gonna be a consequence of object-oriented programming. But I think it's more of a thing on Godot, the notification function. So I have the notification function that is gonna run at different parts of the cycle, because it runs on the game loop and then it calls for it traverses the tree. So it's traversing a tree, calling the notification function for classes, for nodes. Nodes have a class hierarchy. So each time that you call a notification, it recursively, based on notification function, is going to recursively traverse the class abstraction class hierarchy and call notification for each type on the class hierarchy. And then it's going to do that for all the nodes on the tree at different moments of the cycle. So in one part you have tree traversal. This is something that was confusing, still is now. So I think, but it's kind of hard to think about like how to clarify this, because one of the things that it's kind of unique. You can't really reduce unless you break it down. You can't really reduce like a video or a concept that you can think about. Because if you're gonna search for these things, it's gonna be like generic videos about object-oriented programming or stuff like that, and it's not gonna be very helpful. So, but the thing that is confusing that is the relationship between different nodes on the tree and relationship of classes on the class hierarchy. Because you can think about execution of functions as information traveling through memory. So, like in one hand, you're gonna have, so the nature of the tree is like two-dimensional. So you're gonna have the normal traversal, which is just with nodes, and then you have like this virtual traversal, which is the class abstraction, which changes the behavior of the nodes, but it's not really inherently, like is implicitly structured on the class, I think, based on the memnew. So when you use memnew to allocate memory, it's gonna allocate memory for all the stuff that is related to the class. So the memory space of the class is going to contain the abstraction of the class hierarchy on the space. So I guess the size of the index is determined by the size of the memory pool is determined by the class hierarchy, and then the index of the memory pool is determined by the nodes. And the structure of the data is determined by the sequence of control flow that creates the relationship. Creates the relationship between how the memory space changes in relationship to time. So when it comes to threads, why is that confusing? So I guess one of the things I can search for later is a variable. I'm pretty sure you can't really do this. So, like, because this is one of the things about the thread that I thought confusing. I thought it was confusing since the beginning. So when defining a variable using a macro on a class, which class on the hierarchy will the variable be if one more. I'll think about a way to simplify that question later. But it's the first thing that I was thinking about this thing here, that they have the macro there. So they have this macro, and this macro initializes this mutex, which is this thread safe. And then along the path, along this class hierarchy, they also use the same macro, I think. So they don't use on this, but they use on another class that uses this. So it's like a member variable. And so I guess it's not really the same. So I think if you try to use the same macro on the class hierarchy, would just give a warning. So this is obviously easy to test. So I think that there probably isn't, because the weird thing about this is that it doesn't seem that it uses that variable anywhere. The only place that the variable is used is on other classes that are connected to this class, but they're not directly connected, I think. This is something that I can ask anyway. And I think that just based on common sense, it would be like the most derived class has priority on what gets used. But I think that probably it complains when you try to do this. So the question that I'm wondering is, if you use the macro here, if this macro was defined on the null class, what would happen? But I think that it probably throws a compilation error. Not really sure. So I'm gonna test this later. And this is obviously related. Like, this is the thing, I'm not 100% sure if it's related or not to the threads there. I think it isn't, because this variable doesn't have anything to do with the other one. So the way that this works is that it initializes this thread safe as a mutex, which is a member variable of the class now. In whatever class you call this macro here is going to make this mutex be a member variable. And then in some situations, it's going to put this other macro instead of functions on the class, which means that it's going to take the variable that the class initialized and is going to create this mutex lock. And this automatically locks and unlocks the thread based on the constructor and destructor of the thread, which means it's just an easier way to lock and unlock the function call based on the thread here. So as far as I understand, they use this for convenience. But the thing is that they're not using any of these macros here, I think, on their class. So the question that I had is, why do they define the macro there if they are not using? I guess this is where because I know that there is some exploits as well based on types. So I think, yeah, that's probably the one of the core things. The reason why the abstract, class hierarchy relationship with the objects is confusing is because of the types. I think that's what is the fundamental here. So, and the threads gets confusing because of the scope. So what is the structure of the scope when it comes to threads? I would assume that the scope of the threads is determined by where you declare the thread. It's going to be on the class. But it gets even more confusing when you have the templated classes and stuff like that. So, in my opinion, so far, those are the most confusing parts about C++. And the parts that are the more where, like, I think that there's space to change things because they seem overly complicated. So I think one of the parts is the class abstraction, but like it is something that is already inherently gonna be complicated, I think. But the class abstractions and the typing, when it comes to types as well, so class abstraction and types, and the other one is the move operator. It's like because whenever you put true or percents, you have R values and L values. So those things are very confusing as well. And I think trans is going to be the same for all programming languages. It's just something that is going to be confusing. But I think the core of the issue is the relationship between the trans and the types. I think Like the core is the relationship between the thread and the class lifecycle. That's what I'm wondering right now. But it is also confusing when it comes to the scope, I think. Because a class is just a way to organize memory. So you're just putting everything on a box, and then it's kind of like you have an entity. So from the perspective of that box, it's just like a different encapsulation of the boundary of the scope. Oh, I can't really test this right now because I didn't connect the signal. I commented out to fix this first. So I'm gonna have to do it with this one. But I want to spend more time thinking about this stuff because I think it's more important than it makes more sense. It's the whole thing about the trade-off between like fixing things on the now or like focusing on things that are long term. Like usually the way that it's gonna go down, like if you always trying to solve a problem by trying to find the quickest solution, then you don't focus on the fundamental, what's gonna happen is that in the present you're gonna be able to solve faster, but over the long run you are slower because you're focusing on you're gonna encounter the same thing multiple different times. So, and there's always a trade-off, obviously, because of the speed, but I think a lot of the times it makes more sense to focus on the fundamental so that you increase the speed at which you solve all subsequent problems. That makes more sense, I think. So that's the reason why I think it's probably better to spend a bunch of time focusing on what exactly, trying to clarify what exactly is the fundamental thing here. Because the thing is, like, I think the flags are a side effect of something deeper. That is a fundamental structure of the way that the relationship between these different things, like the relationship between the things is going to impact the memory flow on the program. That's what the main difference I think from a class to a function is going to be the way that they deal with scope, because everything at the bottom layer is going to be just data over branches. I think that's what computation is. So you have if statements, which are basically labels. And I think those are the fundamental things about programming. So it's just basically labels and data. That's all that it is. The labels are the abstraction, which is a projection of a network, which is the instruction set architecture. That creates the program, which is a sequence of steps. And then you have the memory, which is going to be the numbers. So the main difference between a function and a class would be the sequences of control flow. The structure of control flow, the finite state machine that creates the abstraction that differentiates the scope of the memory. I think with threads it's kind of like the same thing. So this is, I think, one of the reasons why I always feel like types are kind of weird. Because what exactly is the point of the type? Because the type is not really what you're managing, it's a description of what you're managing. It has to do more of the compiler. But like for the basic types, for the built-in types, it makes sense. because on the bottom layer you're gonna have to, like, it doesn't make sense to code everything on assembly, obviously. So, and even on assembly, it's already gonna have the abstraction of the control flow paths or data paths that are gonna turn everything to an integer eventually. Everything to binary, but I think the closest abstraction from binary is gonna be integers, which is just again another projection of the network, because binary is just encapsulation of the symbols that people use to create a perception of space-time. So like mathematics is just a projection of humans' symbolic representation over reality. So like if you think about it, the symbols are like a convergence, a gravitational force of the symbolic representation of human beings, of space-time, of the geometry of space-time. And they are like the multifractal gravitational force of the network. Because on the decimal system is gonna go from zero, like you only have 9 different symbols, unique symbols, when it comes to the basics scalars. And that's how mathematics evolves as well. That's why I have more symbols as more complex it gets, because you're capturing more of the geometrical space of geometrical nature of space-time. So the binaries is basically the same. You're just capturing the geometry of space-time by the fluctuation of decisions, which is information. So it's less efficient because it captures less patterns. Like it takes more bits to capture the same pattern as you would have with decimals. But you can, and probably is that way, make the argument that the symbolic representation of the decimal is already, it already has the assumptions of the binaries. It's just a subconscious construction of the information of geometry, which I think it is the case because the binary captures the electromagnetic field, and the perception of geometry, which is the symbols used on mathematics, is just a consequence of the fluctuation of the electromagnetic field, which is the pressure mediation, which is going to create the illusion of distinction, which is geometry, which is space and time. So I think that with the threads, so I guess the question would be, because a thread, I guess like the thread is a consequence of the scope already. So because obviously you're gonna initialize the thread either on the function or on the global scope or on the class, or it's gonna be static, which is gonna be on the data of the process. So it's already a consequence of, but from that point on the scope, how does, I guess it's more a question of lifetimes. That's why it's confusing. The question is both the scope and the lifetimes because they're interconnected. I think the main question is the scope though. No, not the scope, the lifetime. So the lifetime of classes and different times. I guess this is another one that is fundamental. Like is the implicit typecasting, I think. And what it means for, what does it mean for uh So on the thing that I have here, the reason why, like, what triggered all of this thinking is the thing that is running, and this is not the first time that it happens. Like sometimes this happens as well, but like I never, I just assume that like is running the cycle in the way it's supposed to run, but I never. It's hard to think about because it is running the destructor that there like 3 times, but I'm initializing the class only 1 time. So, and I think that this happens on different situations as well. Like obviously there's possible explanations, but I think you would assume that it would make sense to only run 1 time, the constructor and this destructor, because that's how it's updating, or that's how it's supposed to be added to the scene there. So obviously this could be because of the editor, or because because of the other parts of the code, the events of the code, they are going to impact how many times the class gets destroyed and constructed. But the question is not is about the fundamental principles of this, like, because if there is a distance between your assumption of what's supposed to happen and what is actually happening, then obviously there's a gap of complexity that you don't understand. And there are probably fundamental principles that you are missing to explain, or like to have better predictions of what's going to happen in the beginning. So this obviously could be just because of lack of knowledge of different parts of the Godot system and how it's gonna render everything and how it's gonna set up the things. But I already have like kind of a decent knowledge. Just basically, it's gonna set up the sync tree, just the main thing. There's gonna be responsible for the sync in the beginning of the cycle, and then on the main loop is just gonna, before it runs the main loop, it's gonna get the events using the Windows API, and then it's gonna use the input class to determine what kind of event it is, and then it's gonna call the functions for the classes based on whether or not they had the event on the event function there, the callback function that they have for the events. Then after that, it's gonna run the main iteration function, and then the main iteration is gonna different part. I think the 2 main ones are the process and the physics process. Is gonna traverse the sync tree, which is the main tree, and then this part I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure there's gonna call the notification for the nodes on these different parts if they have the process set to true. So the only difference is on when it comes to the editor. So the editor is gonna run is gonna construct and destroy the nodes, I think more times, because it depends on the state of the scene. So they get based on the name. They get based on the cache and on the name of the cells, the information for the node, and then they use the class DB to instantiate the node again. And they use other class DB functions and other classes to like retrieve the state of the node. So for that reason, it might run more than once, but I was thinking that it would only run twice. And I think the reason why it runs more times is because of the threads. But then, like, how does that make sense? And I think it has to do with the hardware. I think that's probably why it's kind of hard. It's a black box both on the operational system and on the hardware. Because it depends on the data path. It depends on the other systems of the hardware and how it's gonna, and the operational system and how it's going to deal with multiple processes, which is gonna be connected with the memory system as well. Because the actual memory on the hardware is not, the process memory is just an abstraction. The actual memory on the hardware is going to be based on memory mappings and cache coherence, and the relationship between that and the different processes running on the hardware on runtime. So like in order to understand, this is kind of the problem, I think. In order to understand the relationship of the thread, because like what is happening on when you have a difference between the different threads. I think since they're running on the same process, it doesn't matter that much. the abstractions that happen on the hardware. Yeah, but I guess the question would be what are the heuristics for setting up the lifetime of a thread in relationship to the scope that initialized the thread? That's the main thing, I think. Because the scope also has a lifetime. That's the thing. So scopes are just labels. And this is another thing I was thinking about. Like the main difference between a function and a loop is just the extra information that the function needs to run, but they're both labels at the end of the day. So they're basically the same thing. And that's why like recursion is exactly the same as loops, but the reason why it's a tree is because of the extra information. So the return address and the arguments. And because of that nature, you also have a difference in scope because of the local variables. So because of the stack, you have to transfer the information, and this makes the functionality be different. But at the end, it's going to be just the labels as well. And I think that with the class, it's going to be very similar. So obviously, the fluctuation of the scope of the program is going to depend on the runtime, because it depends on the external interaction of the system. But this is the thing, it's like it's only going to be external if you are receiving inputs. So the inputs are the undeterministic part. Oh, there was a very good thread that I seen as well. Not thread, a response on Stack Overflow. We're gonna search that again. Because I remember that he made the association with multiple threads with general relativity. And he explained based on a plane where you have multiple different threads synchronizing with space, and like each thread will be some relative reference frame. And I think that's more of the direction I have to think about. Yeah, that's probably the direction, because I think that's exactly what is going on. I think the scope is the plane that the reference frames synchronize. A database is a mismatch on the plane. I should have, maybe I saved on the favorites. I think I probably did. Because at the time I thought that it wasn't worth it to think about that, because I was trying to solve other stuff. But I think now it would probably be a good time to go back. Since I'm facing this problem, is more likely that I'm gonna remember, or I'm gonna integrate more the information on my mind about the thing, the rods. I don't think I have here. Something. Okay, should have puts on the. I'm gonna try to ask ChatGPT or Perplexity to see if I... Was there a Stack Overflow response where he puts a book there? Maybe I saved the book. I don't remember. I'm gonna search for the book later. Maybe I'll have here. I think it wasn't a book, it was more of a... It was kind of like a scientific paper or something. I'm not finding here. I'm not gonna be able... I'm gonna search for this later. Was a Stack Overflow answer, I think. Stack Overflow answer, and then there was a scientific paper. Probably gonna go back to studying this. I think I'm gonna stop streaming now, and I'm going to search for this stuff. I'm sure it's gonna be annoying to solve this, but I do think that I can figure something out. But I'm still debating on my mind whether or not to try to change. But I think that probably what I'm gonna do is just go back to these fundamentals and try to clarify more this relationship that I was talking about of the threads and the scope on runtime. So there's the scope fluctuation on runtime, and how that's gonna impact threads, especially on the situations where the thread is affected by the life cycle of the scope that initialized the thread. So I think that that's the main thing that I'm trying to figure out. So once I clarify this more, maybe it will be easier to see. Because I think one thing that I could do is remove the other thread there, but I'm not really sure. Because I could do it, I think I could do it with the same thread that they have instead of having two different variables. Because if one situation can only happen if the other thread is not working, other type of thread, then I don't see why having two different types. Because the scan change is only going to run after the other one's initialized anyway. And you already have the other flag variables. So I think this could be one of the things that could be simplified. And also, I think that the nature of the process. So I think that maybe this is another thing. Maybe it shouldn't be reliant on the process. But the problem is when you put the signal. I think if I put the signal at the end of the function instead, so at the end of the scan file system, instead of putting the process, it would probably be better. Because then there's less chances that it's gonna be affected by the life cycle of the class. Yeah, I'm gonna think about this more. So I'm not just gonna stop streaming here and now today. And I'm gonna search this stuff here and read more and study more. And then I'm going to see, I'm gonna try to solve this again. So probably next time I'm gonna try to solve this again. So see